testing the system to see whether it works. This is Lawrence doing my first podcast and this is Lawrence Ruoko, and I'm just embarking on a podcast career. It's quite a good career path because I have a lot of things that I could share. I currently live in Australia. I grew up in Zambia. I studied in the UK, and I'm originally from Zimbabwe. So that gives you the complexity of my life experiences. One of the topics I want to bring up is I had a look at the internet costs across Africa, and I kept asking the question, why is the internet in Zimbabwe so expensive? What can be done to fix that? And let me start with a simple comparison. In some parts of Africa, you can buy a gigabyte of data for less than $1. In Zimbabwe, in some cases, the same gigabytes can cost tens of dollars. Because it's not just a technology gap, it's not even an economic issue, it's a structural system problem. And in this episode, we're going to break it down to three things: why the internet in Zimbabwe is so expensive, why it has stayed that way for so long, and the realization that a 5-year roadmap could bring prices down to Kenyan or Nigerian levels. So let's put the Zimbabwe scenario in context. In countries like Kenya, Nigeria, the mobile data is extremely cheap. In Kenya, competition between operators and early investment in digital infrastructure helped bring prices down to under $1 per gigabyte. In Nigeria, a massive population scale and aggressive competition between the telecom companies pushed prices even lower, essentially among the cheapest in the world. But Zimbabwe sits at the opposite end of the spectrum. It is consistently ranked among the most expensive places on earth for mobile data. And that raises an obvious question. Why? Now, the reason why data is so expensive in Zimbabwe, there are some 5 core reasons. Firstly, limited competition. There's a small number of dominant telecom players, which means less pressure to reduce the prices. Secondly, there's a high regulatory cost. Licenses, spectrum fees, and sector taxes are significant, and those costs are passed on directly to the consumers. Thirdly, there's an infrastructural constraint. Much of the bandwidth is imported or routed through expensive regional infrastructure. Essentially, Zimbabwe having to pay for that passageway. Fourthly, the current instability. Telecom equipment is priced in US dollars, but revenue often fluctuates locally. This creates a risk, and the risk always gets priced in. The fifth item is the small user base. There's much fewer internet users, which means the cost of the infrastructure is spread across fewer people, making each gigabyte more expensive. And the result is a cycle: higher prices, fewer users, high cost per user, and even higher prices. And this cycle is hard to break. Now, here's something important that has changed: the Starlink disruption. Satellite internet has entered the market, most notably Starlink. And this is the first real internal disruption, rather external disruption to Zimbabwe's telecom system. Unlike traditional internet, Starlink does not rely on local towers or fiber networks. It bypasses the entire system. And the pricing model is therefore fundamentally different. Instead of paying per gigabyte, users pay a fixed monthly fee for unlimited access. Wow. For heavier users, this is a game changer, but there's a catch. The upfront cost is high, and most households find this out of reach. So what we see is not full disruption, but partial disruption. As dual system is emerging, one group has fast and limited internet, another still pays higher per gigabyte rate. So why has Starlink fixed everything? Even with Starlink, three main barriers remain. Firstly, affordability. The upfront costs are still significant for most households. Secondly, the currency constraints. Payments are all in US dollars. And thirdly, the regulatory friction, even new technology subject to local fees and restrictions. So while Starlink provides that cheap unlimited internet, and that's technically possible, it hasn't yet become universally acceptable. The 5-year fix, what actually needs to change? Now let's talk solutions. Not theory, not wishful thinking, but a realistic roadmap. There's 7 pillars. Pillar 1 is a regulatory reform. Zimbabwe needs to stop treating telecom as a primary revenue source. Lower fees, reduce sector-specific taxes. Shift the mindset from a revenue extraction to digital expansion. Because in Kenya, lighter regulation, helped expand the access and reduce the prices. Pillar 2, real competition. Introduce what is known as MVNOs, mobile virtual network operators. Allow new network internet service providers into the market. Enforce infrastructure sharing. Competition is the single biggest driver of lower prices anywhere in the world. Pillar 3 then becomes an infrastructure expansion. Invest in nationwide fiber networks. And this requires open access so multiple providers can use the same backbone. This reduces duplication and cost. Pillar 4 would be to embrace satellite internet, fully liberalize satellite broadband. Let providers like Starlink compete freely alongside mobile networks. A tall order given this Zimbabwe's history. Because competition from outside the system forces international pricing pressures. Pillar 5 would be a currency stability. This is critical. As long as telecom operators have faced currency volatility, they will price defensively. Stability enables long-term pricing reduction. Pillar 6 is expand the user base. Reduce smartphone import costs. Effectively lower the cost of acquiring a phone. Improve digital literacy across all the population. Expand rural connectivity. Zimbabwe is small enough to be able to do that because more users means lower cost per user. And the last pillar, pillar 7, is the mindset, the national mindset. Internet must be treated as infrastructure, like roads or electricity, not a luxury or a revenue stream. And it must be used as foundation for economic growth. So what success would look like? And this is after the 5-year period. Year 1, reform begins, early competition appears. Year 2, new entrants and initial pressures. And then year 3 becomes a more meaningful price reduction. And year 4 is a period of mass adoption. And year 5 would be moving towards the Kenya and Nigeria pricing levels. Under $1 a gigabyte can become realistic. However, there are risks. And these are, if the policy remains inconsistent, if taxation remains high, if competition is restricted, then prices will only fall marginally, and Zimbabwe will remain one of the most expensive internet markets in the world. So here's the core takeaway. Zimbabwe doesn't have a technology problem. The technology exists. What it has is a structural problem built around regulatory competition, currency, and incentives. Until those shift, prices won't move meaningfully. If they do, the change could be dramatic because the difference between expensive internet and cheap internet is not technical, it's political and structural. Effectively, the internet becomes a base for economic growth and expansion of the industrial base for Zimbabwe. Um, Many inroads can be made into forays into acquiring AI and other more advanced technologies to improve productivity in the workplace, which would be cheaper because access to the internet would be much lower, dollar per gigabyte. In summary, I still see a way forward, and all the thinkers in Zimbabwe must be made to take heed of the need for change. And that need for change is sooner rather than later. And with a few heads being butted and planning going into the phased approach, the situation could be much better service for all consumers, industrial and personal. Thank you for your time and have a good day.